So my name is Gail Paul. I'm a vice president and partner at MindWire, and I've held roles such as vice president of total rewards, consulting practice lead, and other management roles. And so like you, got responsibility to coach and lead others, and I've had that responsibility since early in my career. I'm pretty old, so I've got lots of experience, some good, some bad, and that kind of informs my experience. So hopefully, I can be helpful for you today. This is our agenda. We're going to delve into where behavior comes from. We're going to talk a lot about coaching and how to personalize it, how to give effective feedback, and then how to set goals and measure progress. So at the end of the day, what we really want is from this webinar is that it helps you learn how to identify each employee's unique strengths, their motivators, their development areas, and that you learn how to use PI to tailor your coaching approaches and, really get to that personal level, that motivational level with your employees so you can be more effective and impactful as a leader. All right, so let's kind of dive in here. A lot of you, if you've attended MindWire events before, you've seen this beautiful pie chart that we have in front of us. Basically, what this breaks down into is that everybody has this magical mix of fixed and variable characteristics. Our fixed attributes, however, are not always obvious. So PI, that's why we have PI, right? Is that we can assess folks, we can find out what those traits are, those fixed traits from a behavioral and cognitive standpoint. But often the variable attributes get all of the attention, right? The skills, the experience, education, what people know about their professions. And these are valuable pieces. They're important and they factor into a person's success. But too often we minimize those behavioral and cognitive wiring pieces. Today, however, we're really going to focus on those because we want to learn how to leverage them to bring out the very best in people that we're leading. It's important to play to people's strengths, right? Because what they're good at is what they want to spend their time doing. And they enjoy that. That's what powers them through their day. So getting to that motivational level underneath those strengths will help them reach their potential. And we're trying to set people up for success by matching their natural strengths with what the organization or the job needs or what you need as a leader with them on your team so that their work aligns with what they love to do. And where they have gaps between how they're wired and what you need from them or what the job needs from them, as leaders, we can help create that self-awareness with them in a positive way. And then help them see the ways they can develop skills and experience to fill in those gaps, right? Help them pivot a bit, get a little more successful, become a higher performer. And what we're really striving for is that lower right quadrant, right? That discretionary effort quadrant, where the balance of those natural strengths and experience and skill development, right? Both the fixed and the variable pieces combine to provide a highly engaged employee, right? Somebody who strives to give discretionary effort and high performance to their job. I do want to say that most organizations, as we recommend, don't provide broad access to employees' cognitive data. So often you will not have access to that. And that's okay. We're going to be focusing primarily today on the behavioral pieces and how to use that to motivate folks. So why do people behave as they do? Well, that's a great question. People have been asking that question for a long time. So when we think about it, our actions begin with our drives. Our drives are the things that are born in us, right? Things that just kind of come naturally to us. It's kind of a mix of heredity, experience, and learning. These drives create needs. And I like to equate the needs to sort of that itch, right? That itch that needs to be scratched. And the behavior is that scratching, right? So we're responding with behavior to those needs that come from our drives. So how can we easily find out what someone's drive, strengths, and motivating needs are? Well, luckily for us, PI makes this really easy. The very first screen you see when you go into a person, so, when you go into the PI system, look someone up, pull up their page, the first thing you see is the overview. And if you dig into the overview and expand all the pieces that you can see on that screen, it gives us everything we need to know to get a very high level understanding of them. And as you can see in this example, this person has high extroversion and dominance, right? High extroversion here with the extroversion with the B, dominance with the A, right? Both are high, extroversion being the highest. And that's coupled with low patience, the C being low patience, and low formality, the D being low formality. Here's our dividing line, just as a refresher. This is the average behavior, so anything to the right of that's going to be high. Anything to the left of that's going to be low. In the system, when you hover over these letters, it reminds you of what they stand for. So don't ever be ashamed or embarrassed. Just go right to this page, hover over these letters, and it'll remind you. Also below it, we see the corresponding description of the letters. So it's a really great page to get familiar with. And as you can see, it describes the behaviors, right underneath the factor title. So we can see what low patience is. What does it mean? Well, it means that this person is likely to be intense, restless, driving. How intense, restless, and driving? It even tells us that, right? Very, right? Why is it very? Because we're in here in the second sigma low. Excuse me. And so we know that once we get out of this first sigma, where we have moderate behavior, we start to be very strong, very consistent in that behavior. So it gives us a wealth of information right off the bat. Additionally, it tells us what are the associated motivating needs. So when somebody's low patience, what they need is lots of variety. They need to work quickly. And they like mobility, meaning they like to either physically go to different places as part of their work, or at least have very different types of work that they do. So already we began to learn more about this person in a very meaningful way. Another place we can go to learn about somebody and how they like to be managed is on the behavioral report itself. And so this is quite helpful as well and easy to find. So as soon as you run a behavioral report on somebody, you actually go to the very back page, very bottom of the back page. And we've got these handy bullets right here. And what this does is it describes what this person need based on their whole pattern. And it's the top pattern right here, the self pattern. This is what drives all the information that we care about. And it gives us some really great tips for what they need in the workplace. So already a couple of really good resources. We're going to give you another one as well, which I'll get to in the next slide. But first, I want to tell a little story about one of my clients who's a COO of an organization. She is a captain profile, so high dominance, and her extroversion is right on the line, kind of average extroversion. So she's highly aware of the fact that sometimes she can be kind of directive and controlling. And this isn't always the best approach for her team. So she told me that before every one-on-one that she has weekly with her direct reports, she pulls this out and reminds herself of how that person likes to be managed and tries to get into that headspace with that person so that, she's giving them what they need, not falling back into her comfort zone and being this high control, directive type of leader, right? And that can work. High control directive can be great in an emergency, but, most of the time people want a little more extroversion, a little more sensitivity, right? And she knows that. And so this is just a great example of how you can use that tool. Here's another one that we will be sending out to you after today's presentation. I just love this one pager. It's just so handy because just like the overview page, it gives you a wealth of information, pretty easy to see quickly and find out what you need to know. How to use this best is to look at someone's profile. And here I just put a little example up here. And you can see I I've circled a couple of places on the profile. I like to look at the highest factor, which is the one furthest to the right. And in this case, it would be A, or dominance. And then I like to look at the lowest factor. And in this case, it would be C, or low patience. So knowing that, you can just hop down to the high dominance description here, high A or dominance. Here are the things you'll want to focus on from a strength standpoint, right? So we can look across this guide. We can see that this person is likely to be confident, competitive, right? Resilient. They're going to enjoy winning, right? That's what they strive for, is wins. They're going to be competitive. They're going to like control, drive for outcomes. And you can be pretty bottom line direct with them, right? So the key thing when coaching and giving feedback with this person is it's okay to be direct. The watch out is you don't want them to feel like they're losing. So in setting up coaching with a high dominance person, it's good to kind of set the stage and say, this is going to help you win, right? I'm giving you information and insights, not because you're losing, but because it will help you win. Their lowest factor is patience. And so we can hop down here to the low C, low patience, and read about that too. The fact that they like pressure, they like to be busy, they like variety. They actually don't thrive when there's not enough to do. So checking in with them, making sure that they feel like they're getting, challenging assignments and interesting things to do, that's important. Also, playing to that lower patience, coaching them in a way that broadens their efficacy with various parts of the organization, opens them up to more and different opportunities, which they'll enjoy, right? They like that ability to expand. So that's an example of how you might use this tool. All right, so let's get into crafting personalized coaching plans. How do we use the information that we get once we have it? First, though, I want to walk through when is coaching appropriate, right? We want to think about what coaching is and does, because there's lots of different ways that we interact with people as leaders. And sometimes we have to use different tools in our toolkit. Coaching is just one of them. So if a person is needing more information, knowledge, understanding of the actual aspects of their job, that's an actual training opportunity. Now, can you use PI to help train people? Of course you can, right? But it's not coaching that we're talking about. We're talking about delivering information. And of course, you can use PI to help them, help figure out the right pace, the right amount of detail, that kind of thing that the person will enjoy and need. But it's delivering information, right? It's not coaching. If someone, however, needs practice, they know what they need to do, but they're not that good at it yet. So you need to build their confidence. That would be coaching, right? That would be that positive, reinforcing, helping them get there kind of approach. That's what we're talking about when we think about coaching. Sometimes we've got failure prevention, right? Gail's eating glue in the break room again, right? That's not a coaching moment. That's something else entirely. So, we need to intervene and get Gail some help. How about enhancement of good performance? They're a great performer, but they could get better, right? We all can. That's also coaching, building on those strengths, right? Helping people develop muscle memory around helpful behaviors and reactions, right? Building strength and independence towards achieving their own success. So coaching should be a positive experience generally, even if you have to deliver some more difficult skill or competency development information. We can always do it in a positive way, looking at the outcome, what they're going to get for achieving that outcome, right? In a way that appeals to their motivating needs. So let's talk about how we might craft a coaching plan. First, obviously, you want to observe your employee. So I know we had a question earlier about building that relationship with the person. PI will tell you a lot, and that'll give you a head start in building that relationship with an employee because you can look at those needs and characteristics of that person. But you also need to see how they deploy those strengths in their day-to-day. So carefully observing them, seeing what they do, how they use their strengths, what their areas of opportunity are, taking some good notes. Taking good notes is important if you're a leader anytime, right? Just making some mental notes, writing them down later so that you can come up with those specific examples. That's going to be real important. And if you're a leader with low formality, this might be a challenge for you. So this is something you'll have to figure out. How do I make sure I keep those observations top of mind? You're going to move into preparation phase once you've had enough observation. And this is where you want to think about the strengths you want to amplify with that employee. You want to definitely play to those strengths. So you can use PI to do that. And you can use your observations to cite specific examples of when they've used their strengths. People love that, right? Hey, I saw that you really used your empathy in that particular situation. I really appreciate that, kind of giving that positive, and citing a specific example, right? Then they know that you really understand them and get them. Also, preparing for, the opportunity that the employee has to further develop the strength or to use the strength to overcome something else, right? Getting ready for that discussion as well. And the key to coaching is asking the right questions. That's really what it's all about. Because coaching is not directing. Coaching is helping the employee solve their own issue and grow themselves, right? So we want to have those questions ready and feel comfortable asking those open-ended questions. For some of us who are maybe high dominance, lower extroversion, we tend to be directive. This is not the time to do that. This is the time to have those open-ended questions where you can actually pause and listen. Once you sit down with the person, first thing you're going to want to do is make them comfortable. So, I'm going to say it probably throughout the presentation, but the key to coaching is making the time. And that was another thing I saw in the chat is finding the time to be consistent. That hits the nail on the head right there. When we move into leadership, we leave other things behind, or we should, right? We get promoted maybe for things that we do as an individual contributor that maybe get in the way of leading later, right? Where we need to delegate more and let go of those things so that we have the time to make coaching consistent. Because then it's not scary. If it's something we do often with someone, they get used to it. It just gets to be part of the job. And people are comfortable when we sit down and make time for coaching. You're going to be ready with your questions. You're going to ask those questions, and then you're going to listen, as I mentioned before. Let your employee really engage and answer and come up with their own solutions, right? You're developing that critical thinking in your employee, and that's really, really key. Once you've settled on an approach for how they're going to continue to develop a certain strength or address whatever the issue that you wanted to address, and you've come up with a plan, then of course you move into support mode. You are going to want to allow that employee to practice with you, whatever skill or behavior that they're working on. Sometimes you'll give direction, right? You're moving kind of past the coaching conversation. At that point, it's okay to give direction if they need or want it. But the main thing is you're supporting them, you're providing those guardrails to help them on their journey. And so you do want to have some accountability. You do want to have some milestones and an accountability plan that sets a date for follow-up. If you have regular one-on-ones, it's great to just make it part of that, frankly. And that way it just becomes a natural thing that you do every week or every other week, how often you have your one-on-ones. So that's the general process. So I stressed that a lot of coaching is just asking questions and listening. So what kinds of questions should you ask? Luckily, PI has our back there too. We have the PI coaching guide in the system, super easy. Once you're in that employee dashboard page, just go down to the coaching guide. Now, I will say this, you've got to have a job profile in place, or you won't have a coaching guide. Because what the coaching guide does is it compares the person's profile, as you can see here with the ABCD. It overlays that on top of the job that the employee is in. In this particular example, we actually have a really excellent match between the employee and their job. But maybe sometimes they might struggle, right, with deadlines or getting things done quickly enough for other people, especially if they're lower patients. But also, this job does have some low patience requirements. And fortunately for us, we have some great open-ended questions here that we can ask the person about their higher patience. So how do you respond to a fast-paced work environment with multiple priorities? You better be ready with the next question, though, because what this person is likely to say is, I don't like that, right? I don't react well to that. So we have a next question. Okay, what could you do to get more comfortable with that kind of environment? Because guess what? That's the environment we have here. So then you elicit their problem solving, right? They're going to get in there and think about, okay, what do I need to be able to deal with that, deal with the job I'm in and the environment that I'm in and speed up a little bit. And then they can tell you what they need from you, support maybe that they need from the team, and then what they need to do maybe to grow into that role better. And then you can be there to support them. The other thing that to think about is just because somebody may fit their role really, really well, as this person does, doesn't mean that they don't need coaching in some other ways. They may request coaching. This person may say, hey, I would like to take a bigger leadership role on this team. How can we help that person do that? Well, let's see. What do they have in spades that can help? Oh, look at this. They're extroverted. How could you build upon your ability to persuade and motivate others? Persuading and motivating. Those are some great leadership skills, aren't they? So let's build on that, right? Let's work on that and help you take on some leadership responsibilities on the team, right? So again, questions that can help you with a number of different approaches for this individual. We are also going to give you this lovely library of coaching questions that we've developed. So you will get this after the presentation. And as you can see, we just have some general coaching questions here on the left, right? And we tell you what they do, right? These questions help them talk and reflect, just really open-ended questions like, hey, what's going on, right? That's a perfectly good coaching question. As long as you have another one ready when they have their answer. Taking action questions, measuring results questions, etc. We also have some questions focused on their highest factor. So keeping that in mind, right? How to build on their strengths. So when you're thinking about the highest factor, again, it's the one furthest to the right. And so you can just get very simple and just focus on that in your coaching, and that is wonderful. Now, I just want to mention here that in our experience, we've heard a lot from leaders that coaching high performers can be almost as stressful as coaching low performers. So I don't know if you feel that way, but it is something we hear a lot. And why is that? Well, the other thing we hear is that high performers are already so good at so many things that leaders are just grateful to have them, and they don't want to rock the boat, right? They don't want to, they're kind of afraid to talk to them. I don't want to mess this up. This is a good thing. Also, sometimes leaders can be a little intimidated by high performers. And, that's human. That's perfectly normal. But do you, as the leader, do you have to teach this high performer everything? Nope, right? Coaching is about helping other people teach themselves. And so what you need to do as a good leader is just solicit their thinking, get them thinking. You can do that, right? You can get them cogitating and thinking about, how did that go? Could it be better, right? And they can develop their own insights. Heck, you may even learn something from them, right? Which is a bonus. All right, let's move into, now that we know what coaching is and does, let's talk about, more about the how and how often. So PI has done a survey back in 2018 where they asked people about their managers and about how often their manager provided coaching and feedback to try to get at how much coaching is enough and what's the correlation between coaching and perception of the manager. And there is a correlation. As you can see, bad managers gave the right amount of feedback about 5% of the time, great managers about 77% of the time. But this chart's really fascinating, right? Here we have manager ratings over here and the amount of feedback. Managers who gave no feedback, not great, not a great score, right? Managers who gave some but left people wanting more were, 6.5 rating. Managers who gave just the right amount of coaching had a pretty nice score of average about 8.6. But then it starts to drop off, right? Just enough coaching is great. Too much is too much, right? You don't want to micromanage people. So more is not always better. So you're going to have to gauge this. It's a little tricky. And guess what? It depends on each employee. Each employee needs different amounts of coaching. High performers need a little less. Maybe once a month is plenty, or every other week. So here's some things to think about. Where is the employee in terms of his or her familiarity and skill with the job? And with the organization, right? A lot of coaching just has to do with how to navigate where they're working. What are the unspoken rules? How can they find those, right? Sometimes it's not the job itself, but just the interactions. How difficult are the skills and behaviors being coached, right? Are you trying to give them some kind of complex skills that really change depending on the situation? Well, that's pretty tough to teach and for them to learn, and might require more follow-up, more examples, right? More practice. Also think about the strengths the employee has that align with the skills and behaviors being reinforced. So I can speak to the fact that, low extroversion, that's me, might need more help with people-oriented behaviors. And I'm not afraid to admit that. I definitely have needed more coaching on people-oriented behaviors throughout my career. Give me a spreadsheet, I'm fine, right? Interacting with people, wow, it's tough. PI has helped me a lot with that. I'll say that. High dominance, right? May need more help with collaboration or sharing. That's going to be tricky for them. But let them solve their own problems. They love to do that. I just want to put in a note here as a high D precision-oriented person. Remember, your high D precision people don't need coaching on that, right? They'll find their own mistakes, and when they do, they'll feel terrible about it. So they don't need coaching about that. They probably just need some support and reinforcement. I'm going to tell you a quick story. My current boss who was my boss back at the time that this happened, back in 2006, Tom Riggs, our CEO. I had a very key job putting together some very public information, and I made a mistake on it. And of course, I found the mistake immediately. It was too late, but I found it. And I felt absolutely horrible. I wanted to fire myself. I went into Tom's office and I said, I think you're going to have to fire me. And he said, what? And I told him why. And he said, no, I'm not going to fire you. Everybody makes mistakes. And yeah, that's a pretty big one. But, I know you're going to make sure you never make that mistake again. And he also knew that I was going to go home and beat myself up about it all night, right? That's what high Ds do. And when I came in the next morning to work, guess what was on my desk? There was a bouquet of flowers and a really nice note. Those are the things you can do to really help people know you're on their side. That made a huge difference for me. So just remember, people often are their own worst critics, especially with that high D. Sometimes high B will do it, right? If they've let somebody down. So be sensitive around that too, that coaching is not correcting. It's helping people be successful. So on that note, let's talk about what is good feedback. It's specific, right? So when you're wanting to bring attention to something, you're going to want to make those examples. So keeping those notes that we mentioned earlier. Sharing the strengths, what they do well. Do that a lot, right? Way more than you have to share where they need to develop or change. Emphasize strengths, right? Be constructive. Have clear goals in mind. What's the outcome of this session going to look like if it's successful? And strive for that. Make sure that everything you say is intended to help the employee improve and that the employee knows that that's what you want, right? You want them to win. You deliver it with a customized approach, as we've been talking about, and we want to build trust. So that frequency, knowing the intentions, knowing that we want the employee to get better, be successful, is very, very important. What not to do? Well, we don't want to give a lot of public praise for a private person. So if somebody's low B and you think that, hey, let's coach this person out in public about how wonderful, blah, 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 and let's just heap praise on them in front of 20 people. Nope, not for that person. High B, yeah, you bet. They're going to love that. Don't give feedback on something you know they can't do anything about. Sometimes you have to, put away the coaching and just realize that people do have limits. Some people are so painfully shy, they're never going to be good at public speaking, and that's okay. They're great at other things. So you may have to do some work adjustments. Hopefully you haven't hired this person to do public speaking, but usually it's a part of their job, a small part that you can move on from. Don't one and done surprise with the feedback, right? Make sure that you have follow-up, that you have support. You don't just dump it on them. You do want them to develop that self-development muscle, but, until they get that, they're going to need some help. And remember not to share the feedback the way you would want to hear it. Of course, that's what PI is all about, helping us get into the mind frame of someone else, what they need, how they need to hear the information for it to be effective. Sometimes it's the same as you if they have a similar profile, but often it's not. And when it isn't, it's harder for us to understand. And so more preparation is needed for those folks that have opposite characteristics from our own. So giving good feedback includes, as we've mentioned, having clear goals, right? What do the outcomes of this session look like if we're successful? And operating under those goals throughout. When you start the session, start with gratitude. Thank them, right? Hey, thanks for your efforts on such and such, right? You did this and that and that, and that was really, really great. And give a specific example for the good. And if you have an area for improvement, also specific. If you're talking to a high D employee, you're going to need, specific dates, times, what did you do, right? Because they'll want it. And you'll need to be specific in other ways, like planning next steps, etc. They will be, right? They'll come up and you can challenge them to provide the detail too. But as far as giving an example, they're going to want to know exactly what you observed. So, and pay attention to motivating needs on those specific examples, right? Because you want to set them up for success. So if you have a high B person, you want to protect kind of their image. You want to provide the information in a way that they know you and everybody else still thinks they're wonderful. But hey, here's one thing you might be able to do better and be even more effective with others, right? So pay attention to those motivating needs when delivering the information so that you're appropriately sensitive about the right things. And then get their response. Again, it's all about them coming up with their ideas about how to improve, right? You want to gently guide them if they're going in the wrong way, right? But it's up to them. If they're going to develop that muscle, they've got to do it. So to do that well, we want to personalize the feedback communication. So if we're talking to a high dominant person, they want to win, right? So positive feedback will always be welcome, right? It's always welcome for almost anybody, but especially high A, yay, I won, right? They need that reinforcement. Developmental feedback needs to be phrased so that the employee sees the connection between the effort to put in to that development and the winning, right? Hey, if you want to win around here, high dominance person, here's what you need to do, right? Or better yet, if you're coaching them, if you want to win around here, what should you do, right? What do you think winning looks like in this environment? How can you influence people better, right? Or more people? So using those key phrases that tugs at that high A's motivating needs. High B, make sure and reinforce their value and confidence in them, right? You do have confidence in them. You do like them, right? They do want to be included and liked, and you have to walk a fine line, right? You don't want to be their friend. You still have to be their boss, but they do want to feel like they're included. They're part of the team. The team likes them, right? That they're important to that team. If you have constructive feedback for a high B, never do it in public. Always do it in private. Their image will get bruised if you do it in public. Actually, pretty much anybody's, but especially high B. And so, you want to appreciate their strengths, but you also want to show them how addressing a developmental issue will help them have better relationships with more people, right? That's their motivating need. Highest C, include the why. Why do I need to do this? Why do I need to develop? What is important about it? What should I do now? When should I do the next thing, right? They need time to process and think. They may ask a lot of those questions, and a good answer is, what do you think, right? You're coaching them. You want them to think about it, and you want them to set the pace. You want them to think about the milestones, right? If you have a deadline in mind, it's fine to bring it up, but make sure and elicit their thinking and touch base with a high patience person more frequently along the journey with those milestones to keep them focused. If someone is highest D, as we've mentioned, they're going to need in-depth examples. They're very detail-oriented, very factual. So you're going to need to provide that perspective and make sure your expectations are really, really clear. Again, if they've made a mistake, they're going to feel terrible, right? So what's the coaching? The coaching is everyone makes mistakes. We're human. Guess what? You're super good at catching them and super good at making sure they never happen again. That's a wonderful thing. They're usually needing to develop in other areas, high Ds. Sometimes it will be their people skills. Sometimes it will be maybe speed to delivery. But whatever it is, they will need a map of how to get there. And they will want a map, right? They want to see where they're going, where they're starting, and how to get there. You can elicit their support in filling out that map. That's really important in the coaching process. But at the end of the day, they're going to want to walk away, right? They're going to want to take something with them. All right, let's talk about how to set goals and measure progress. I think most of you are familiar with this model, the SMART goal model, where we talk about specific goals, right? What exactly are we trying to achieve? Getting very clear about that, especially with our high D employees. We want it to be measurable. So what does success look like? How do I know when I've arrived? Again, we don't want to put a super shy person in charge of public speaking. Is this an attainable goal? Is it relevant to the job or to the person's career development, right? How do we bring that relevance into the equation? And then time bound, right? The accountability. When is it due? When do you want to achieve it? What are the milestones? So by using this method, you can ensure that you establish goals for your team members and expectations that are clear, reasonable, time-bound, agreed upon, right? Make sure they're agreeing on all of this stuff. So what do you think? What do you think the measure should be? Does this align? Do you think it aligns, right? What do you think a reasonable time frame is for this? And when measuring progress, you want to check in regularly. If you have one-on-ones, that's the time to do it. If you don't, maybe you need to think about incorporating those into your routine. Make sure your expectations are out there too. If the employee doesn't guess right when in your open-ended questions, you may have to help guide them a little bit, help them see why, especially if they're high patience, why the deadline needs to be what it is, how it supports other things, how it prepares them to get ready for specific events if those are coming up. Also set expectations with them about what should be shared in the one-on-ones. Some of your high D employees may need an actual structure, a form. Here are the topics we're going to cover. Here's what I'm going to be asking you to fill me in on in terms of your development progress. Depending on patience level, you may need to give more milestones and timelines, as we've mentioned, and depending on formality, you may need to give more structure and details. So I had an employee who was highest patience with high formality. He had lower dominance and low extroversion. And in coaching him, his big issue, he was excellent at so many things. And so he got a lot of kudos. But he was not great at communicating project statuses with his peers, with the low B. He was heads down. He knew where he was. He didn't need to tell anybody, right? So I had to sit down with him and provide him specific examples of when his lack of communication resulted in missteps in the project sequencing and quality. And I chose those aspects, right? The project sequencing, the method got messed up. What does that appeal to? His high patience. He cares about that, right? He wants things done in the right order and the right priority. So his ears picked up, and obviously quality outcomes with his high formality, that was also really important to him. He did not want things not to go right. And with his lower dominance, he didn't want to let the team down. So I had to be careful. I didn't want to, be critical. I just wanted to, paint the picture. And then I said, hey, what do you think would help your team members make sure to be aware of where you are so they can take the right step at the right time? I'd like you to come up with an idea. I knew it probably wouldn't be in-person communication because his extroversion was 2 sigmas low. And his solution was not synchronous in-person communication. Surprise, surprise, right? He came up with a great idea, though, right? He came up with this method where he would have a project board and he would update that when necessary. It did take him some time. Like, he didn't come up with it in the first session. It was, the next couple of one-on-ones later that he had come up with an approach. And it was beautiful. It was a lovely thing. But guess what? He forgot to tell his team about it, right? So they needed to be able to see it, to know where he was on things, right? So there again was another example of that deep introversion, thinking you've communicated but haven't. So I had to, hey, you going to share that with the rest of the team? Wink, wink. Oh yeah, sorry, right? But once that got out and the team got a hold of it, they loved it. And the details were no longer missed, and he was so much happier for the result. All right. So what we're striving for, obviously, with good coaching, success is clarity of expectations. The employee learns to find their own way. They develop that muscle. And they know when to ask for help, right? They feel that trust with you. They know when to raise their hand. They know you're going to be supportive. And so you're building that relationship. You have increased trust and communication, right? Better performance, better outcomes. And you're going to see growth in competencies, higher productivity, better engagement. Success is not making friends with your employees. Being comfortable. Sometimes coaching is not comfortable. We have to do a little rehearsing. Often I would grab a peer if I had a more difficult coaching session coming up, and I'd practice with that peer first to help me be more comfortable with it, so I wasn't nervous going in. Also, success is not hoping for the best while avoiding difficult conversations. We've all done it. I understand. I get it. But, we're not going to get anywhere until we have those conversations. All right. So I want to talk just quickly in the remaining time that we have about enabling software access. Why am I talking about this? Because if we want our leaders to avail themselves of these cool tools and methods that I just talked about, we want them to be able to see the behavioral information in the system about their employees. So the pros to this: no need for centralized administration. If you happen to be the person administering PI for your organization and a bunch of your managers attended this session and they all come rushing to you for the, coaching report and the behavioral report, and by the way, while we're at it, can we have this, that, and the other thing? If you give managers the ability to generate these themselves, you will not be in that situation of having to fulfill all those requests. It enhances understanding. The point of view, Mindwire's point of view, is that the behavioral assessment shouldn't be private, right? It's all full of good strengths and good things, and we should make sure everybody knows about that. And so it's okay if people can look up everyone's behavioral assessment. That's fine. That's actually good. Improve team communication, right? People can look up other members of their team, find out about them, figure out how they tick. Increase transparency, right? We're going to think about what somebody's strengths are before we put together a project team or before we decide who's going to do what, right? We build a strength-based culture where we emphasize and celebrate those strengths. There's not many cons to doing this. Some people have data privacy concerns. Obviously, when you set up software access for leaders, you're going to want to hide the cognitive, and it's easy to do. There's a checkbox that you don't check, right? So that's pretty easy. There's risk of misuse if leaders aren't trained, but we can help you train them. That's an easy fix, right? And there's not a lot of risk of misuse. I mean, the tools that we have are pretty easy, user-friendly. You don't have to know a lot about PI. The main thing is people are complex. Always check in, make sure that the behaviors, the strengths that you see in the reports, check in and make sure that it's true, right? Ask the employee. So, enabling access best practices: do communicate and set clear expectations, right? Hey, this is what we're doing and why, and this is how you use it. Train leaders. You can send them to training if you want them to be subject matter experts. We're happy to have them attend our Drive Results with Talent so that they really begin to capitalize on their leadership strengths. We also do PI Light sessions where we can quickly train leaders on the key skills and fundamentals. So we're happy to help you out. Just reach out to us. Organize folders by the largest category possible. So I've had some clients go to give access and they say, well, we're only going to give access to each leader to their employees. And so we're going to set up 75 folders. Is that a good practice? No, that's terrible. You know what? It is a lot of work and a lot of security and a lot of maintenance. If somebody transfers from this department to that department, it's a nightmare. So what I advise is let's keep the folders to employees, right? All in one folder, candidates, all in one folder, job profiles, all in one folder, and then friends and family, right? Remember, it's okay to, and recommended to assess friends and family, to practice, right? But we can find them all in one folder. If you do want to segregate employees for other reasons, for running certain reports, et cetera, we have teams. And teams don't require any security access. You can share them. You can set them up. You can delete them without, accidentally deleting other important data. So if you want to know how to set up teams, just reach out to your PI consultant. We'll be happy to show you. Remember to provide read-only access to leaders for all results. If you do want your leaders to send out assessments, that's going to require setting them up as a power user. Make sure your leaders are part of creating the job targets so that you can use those coaching tools. And then track engagements with the software. Are your leaders using it? We can tell you. We have reports we can generate for you that tell you who is using which tools in the system. And we can do that on a regular basis if you wish. So again, just reach out to us. Happy to help you with that. Things not to do. Obviously, don't share cognitive access or scores. Don't create a bazillion folders. And don't restrict employee data on behavioral, right? Behavioral reports are full of strengths. You want to share that. All right. In conclusion, first of all, thank you for attending. It's been great having you. I really appreciate your attendance. We're going to send everyone who has attended these slides in the recording. We're going to send you a coaching how-to, the coaching questions handout that I referred to earlier, and the motivating needs handout. We're also going to send the software access communication template and recommendations so that you have that as well. So I hope this has helped you understand your employees a little better, create some personalized, actionable plans that will, really tie into those motivating needs and help people become more engaged and effective. And also setting goals and measuring progress against those goals. So hopefully this has been a successful almost hour for you. And if you have any specific questions, go ahead and put those in the chat. We have 5 minutes left.
Awesome. Thanks so much. To Brett's point earlier, he was talking about how to coach employees when they're feeling kind of disconnected from the outcome or the goals of the business. And I wanted to bring up what Gail mentioned about using those motivating needs and the communication style, communicating on their wavelength, can help you match your business outcomes to something that they care about. So if your business outcome is driving revenue, but your employee doesn't really care personally about driving revenue, let's talk to them about what they do care about. Is it operational efficiency? Is it building relationships? Is it enhancing the customer experience? And then you'll be able to tie those outcomes to what they care about using those motivating needs. We'll hang out for another minute if anyone has any questions. If not, thanks so much. We'll send you the recording as soon as it finishes processing, along with all these great resources. And we really appreciate everyone joining today.